Excellent.
Thank you. So as a friendly reminder, this meeting is being recorded for our public records and will be posted on the Arlington County Commission Meetings YouTube page. Avoid sharing any personal information that you would not like to be made public. In addition, commissioners joining virtually must have their cameras on. And as a friendly reminder, please state your name before speaking. It helps everyone follow along and makes the conversation more inclusive, especially as using captions. Thank you. Over to you.
Okay, I guess we're ready to start. I'm Elizabeth Priot. I'm temporary chair. Our illustrious chair, Karen Ada, is on vacation. Good for her. So we are going to start. We have a great presentation, and which of you will begin for us? Okay, great.
We'll start with the STAR audit.
Yes, take it away. Oh, Marilyn, do you want people to introduce themselves? I guess you just.
Yeah, I would recommend that. I'd recommend that people go around the room just briefly. I know that we're a little bit behind, so go ahead.
Okay, great.
Yep, so I'm Brian Atkins, one of the commissioners.
I'm Andrew, I'm also another commissioner.
I'm Elizabeth Priot again, and now take it away. Well, why don't you guys introduce yourselves? I'm sorry.
My name is Pierre Howman, and I am the Chief of Arlington Transit.
Wayne Scott, County Auditor.
Shirley Rothwell, Assistant County Auditor.
Hi, I'm Jessica Johnson Riley. I'm an attorney that works with nonprofits, specialists. I know Karen.
Great.
Yes.
Yes. So thank you for coming here to speak with us about the STAR audit. There were a lot of things we were concerned about, and we appreciate the chance to talk with you.
Sure. I think you have some commissioners online.
Oh, Marilyn.
Marilyn McAllis. Yes, I'm online. Yes.
I think that's all the commissioners. Oh, point of order.
All commissioners present.
Laura.
Laura, you might be on mute.
Hello, hi, this is Laura.
There's Laura.
Okay, Andrew, you had a question?
Yeah, point of order. Before we jump into the agenda, should we open the floor for brief public comments?
Yes, we absolutely should. Is there any public comment? I don't hear any, so we'll get started. Thank you for Andrew for the reminder. Okay.
Okay, so this is Wayne Scott, County Auditor. Happy to kick things off here to review the audit that we perform of the STAR audit program. If you could move to the next slide, please. Before we begin into the presentation, we thought it'd be good for us to share a little bit about us so you know who we are as part of your county office of county auditor team. So we'll do that, and then we'll talk a little bit about just our audit process, just to get some context of what does an audit look like and what is that life cycle. We will also then get a quick overview of the audit and then get into the presentation of the results. And I see our colleagues from the Transit Bureau are also here. We'll turn it over to them so they can talk about some of the actions they have taken on the audit since the audit was completed, give a status update there, and then we'll be happy to take any questions that you may have. Next slide, please. So again, Wayne Scott, been in the audit profession a little over 35 years now. I would like to say I started my career at 5, but started much later than that. And so been in the audit profession just over 35 years. I've been performing audits in the private space, quasi-federal government, and nonprofit. The quasi-federal space, I was working for a nonprofit that oversaw a $10 billion fund for the federal government. So
Broadband
what's that?
and broadband.
Yeah, so the
Universal service?
yes, universal.
That's where I work.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a small world.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was with the Universal Service Administrative Company overseeing the Universal Service Fund.
I
So-
work in our customer service division.
Okay, wow, yeah, so I did audits there for many years, working with the FCC Office of Inspector General, performing audits. Also in the nonprofit space, I was with Source America for about almost 5 years. Source America is a nonprofit agency who helps other nonprofit agencies with people with disabilities to get employment. So this when in doing the STAR audit was something near and dear to my heart, as definitely I see the importance of having a group there looking out for everyone for fair representation. And been an Arlington resident since 1997. Been working in the county much longer than that. When I was in private industry. But yeah, I live in the Barcroft area, so happy to not only live in the community, but also work in the community where we are. So I'll turn it over to Shirley.
Thank you, Wayne. So I'm Shirley Rothwell. I'm the Assistant County Auditor. I've been with the county for just over a year. I joined the county in February of last year. My background is strictly federal. Unlike Wayne, Wayne has a lot of experience at a lot of different areas. All of my auditing has been with the federal government. I moved to Arlington in 1987 because I got a job with the General Accounting Office, now Government Accountability Office. I spent about 29 years there.
I work there too.
We're all related. We're all these cousins, right?
So for about 20 years, I did performance auditing, and then for another decade or so, I did a lot of data analysis and kind of performance monitoring of my own team, which was a phase in my career that kind of still is near and dear to my heart. And I left GAO and I went to work for USAID OIG for 8 years as their process improvement director. And then I retired last year for reasons that probably don't need to be explained. Got this job here at the county. I kind of always thought I might spend the last couple of years of my career in Arlington County government. I don't know why I thought that, but I always thought it would be an interesting thing to do. And it's been delightful. I love working with Wayne. He's a great boss. He's a great mentor. And I really enjoy getting to know more about the county, doing auditing. That's most of my auditing at GAO was in the international sphere. So, trade policy and things like that. So the things that we're looking at are nothing I've ever audited before, but it's really interesting. So I'm happy to be here with you guys tonight. We can go to the next slide. So the audit life cycle for anybody who's maybe you've never had the good fortune of being audited. There's a process that we go through both in terms of planning our audit portfolio for the year, as well as planning individual audits. So in terms of the portfolio, we are right now starting to go through conversations to develop our FY27 audit plan. And so that's a series of conversations with different stakeholders to ask them what they think are some key issues in the county that we might want to look at. That will feed into FY27's work plan. In terms of an individual audit, sort of the way we approach it is kind of plan what we think we're going to do in the audit, learn about the subject area, test a couple things, test some methodology, see if the way we think we're going to approach it, can we really approach it that way? Is there data, or do we need to come up with a different approach to get to the answers that we're looking for? And sometimes an audit is iterative. Sometimes you test a couple things and you try a couple things and you finally kind of hit on the methodology. And sometimes they're pretty straightforward. Once we are done with our testing period, we will write the report. We will issue the report, and then we move into a follow-up period, which is where we will be on the STAR report very soon, because that's kind of next. I think what you'll hear from our DES friends that they've already implemented some things in response to the recommendations. So doing follow-up on that audit soon enough. I hit everything you wanted me to cover. Okay.
Next slide, please. So specifically with the STAR audit, wanted to give a snapshot here of what the audit looked like and what in fact, what areas did we include within our scope. The audit was announced in mid-January of 2025, and it continued through June 18th of 2025 when we issued the final report. So you can see that it was roughly just close to 6 months in timeframe. So the audit focused into 4 different areas, as you can see here. So with customer service and technology, performance metrics, vendor oversight, and operational data and invoicing. With regards to customer service and technology, it was taking a look at the adequacy of the applications that were in place to support the program, some customer facing, some behind the scenes as well. So spending time understanding how that technology is used to support the program. So that was taking a look at, and keep in mind, this was all prior to SPARE. I know there's another piece of technology that is in place today. In fact, the team, the Transit Bureau team did ask, as they were looking at SPARE and developing SPARE, while we did not audit anything with SPARE, they would ask us our opinions and to give some insights on some things. So we were able to offer that service along the way, yes.
Did it also include telephone? I just asked because a lot of people who use it are older and they might go right to the telephone instead of an app.
So part of that we did from the customer service side, we did look at call response times, answering times. We didn't get into, I mean, we did see when, to the extent that there were customer feedback, taking a look at customer feedback, whether it was coming in via telephone or on the web. So we did take a look at that as well in there and provided some suggestions around how we could better improve the customer service experience with telephone calls. We also took a look at Trip Broker. That was another tool that was used within the program, and Star on the web. So we did some work there. With regards to performance metrics, there were a number of things that we looked at there, including safety, reliability of the service, ADA compliance, and looking at some of the how the vendors that we have under contract, their compliance with ADA requirements, and again back to some of the customer service data points to the extent that we're collecting data, and again how we were responding to like the timeliness with getting back with customer complaints and customer complaints. Vendor oversight was for the 2 vendors, TransDev and WeDriveU. So we spent time understanding how the Transit Bureau provided oversight of those 2 particular vendors. And then with regards to operational data and invoicing, it was the accuracy and completeness of the data coming in to not only operational data to help us understand how the program was doing, but also how that operational data fed into the invoicing part of STAR. And then just the overall operational effectiveness for driver safety, driver training, and making sure that the services provided by the contractor for WeDriveU, are they making sure that they're well trained, they're being safe, and how they do their jobs, and taking a look at that supporting data. Next slide. So we'll go into the results. You can go to the next slide, please. So again, just from the high level perspective, just what was the overall conclusion? And again, keep in mind, this was prior to SPARE, but overall what we were seeing is that the program succeeds at delivering the basic transportation services. So that's a good thing that we felt confident from what we could see from all of the data points in the customer service, the reliability of the service that we were delivering the basic transportation services. There was some significant deficiencies with some of the operational data that impacted our ability to provide oversight as well as data quality, because that data is very important to help us to be able to drive, excuse the pun, but to how the execution of the program. So there was some recommendations and some findings that we had there with regards to deficiency in the data. The data also provided WeDriveU that there was, and we talk about the results. There was some of the data points that was provided by WeDriveU. At times we did say it was unreliable, it was inconsistent, which ultimately ended up impacting the invoicing piece. So as you can see in the there was one finding with regards to there was how we were being billed for some services that we were being overcharged. In working with the management and with the management team, there were some the responses provided by the Transit Bureau did mention that some of the responses or their actions to correct some of these things would require a negotiated contract, and depending on the the cost or impact to resources that they would be, there could be some differences of how they would implement, which we completely understood. One of the things is, with as auditors, we try to be mindful with, we can talk about in a perfect world the way something should be, but we always say internal controls are not free. They come at a price. So we want to make sure that if there's anything there that they may have to deviate from that, we want to, we totally understood where they were coming from. So we did put a rebuttal in the report to explain that. But overall, the management team did agree with our findings and recommendations, and taking actions to correct the findings that were noted. And again, it's that spare tool we see that they were working towards getting implemented. Again, we couldn't fully make any statements on the adequacy or effectiveness of spare, but what we could see that we thought that it would help, would provide a better customer experience. So next, we'll go into more specifically with some of the findings. So we'll start with the customer service and technology. So as I was saying, we were taking a look at various tools and applications that were used to deliver the service. And within Trapeze, there was a tool or an application called Trip Broker that was not being effectively used to manage last minute trip changes. So one of the impacts of that was so if someone was making a last minute change or needed a last minute request, there was a lot of phone calls that had to occur. So from the customer into customer service into we drive you to the driver. Like it was just a playing hopscotch of getting back and forth to the individual to help them. But that was something that, and I don't want to speak too much on spare because again, we did not, but we saw that would be something that would kind of, and some other technologies, I believe it was another tool that we drive you, Clinton helped me out on this. I think it was EcoLane or something that would better help track where drivers were. So when it was time to manage some of these changes. The other part was with Star on the web portal. And testing some of that functionality, we noticed that there were some errors that were occurring there. And in some cases, it would leave either you could book a particular trip within a particular, like say within zone two. And even though that a trip had to begin and end in Arlington, so there were Star on the web would allow you to book it, but then someone had to come back to say, oh, you can't do that. So our position was it was not creating a good customer experience. And then there was one other issue with regards to zone 3, when attempting to book, it would not allow you to book, even though you were ending or beginning your trip in Arlington to zone 3. The issue there was just the error message itself. Like the error message was not clear. The error message maybe should have been, hey, you'll need to call customer service to actually book this trip, because it was one of the first times. If it was your first time booking a zone 3, that's where the issue was coming up. But if you had booked zone 3 in the previous, then it would allow. So I was using it as a user. I had the ability to use it as a user for a first timer. So that's why I was seeing that particular error. But the issue was that at least come back with an error response that would give you the indication, hey, maybe you need to call customer service to book that trip. So the recommendations are centered around improving this functionality. Again, the management team agreed with the findings in this particular area, and again, leveraging new technology for coming on board as with spare, as well as making some enhancements to starontheweb.com.
I have a question.
Sure.
How did you come up with the recommendations? Did you look at other areas and how they manage their systems, or consulted with experts, or how did it go?
No, it was, it was working with the Transit Bureau and understanding, like, again, how, like, what was some of the technology, like, what was the technology that was there? And like, one, for example, like Trip Broker, we had Trip Broker functionality information to even know, to see that it was the tool could do more, so we could see it was already there. We just had to, like, how do we leverage that piece of the technology going forward? With looking back at, like, we did not look at like Metro Access or any other surrounding. Again, we were just, wanted to be mindful of, in developing some of these recommendations with things that were going to be more realistic and feasible for. So it was I always say this with, and you could probably see it with your own smartphones. These things can do so much. You just have to know how to push the right button. So it was, let's learn how to use the technology we have and maybe get already do what we needed to do.
Do have another question. Did part of the recommendation include, I'm assuming, hoping Spare is complying with the WCAG 2.1 standards for mobile and web content?
So, like, is that getting like 508 compliant or anything?
Yeah, it's a new compliance standard that DOJ recently just rolled out.
So I know we had conversations around the 508 piece, but again, we knew that we weren't gonna be able to, we didn't want to dig into Spare much because that was out of scope for us, but we wanted to make sure that there was some, at least some, of making sure that we're using technology that would be compliant with ADA requirements.
Sounds good.
So this is a answer not from the audit, but the county is, in the last couple of months, has been hosting info sessions and training sessions for all county employees who have, because our website needs to be compliant with that. And I'm, maybe that's something Clinton and Rocco can address, maybe Pierre can address, making sure that anything that's on the county's website is compliant with that law.
Sounds good.
Next slide, please.
Oh, Marilyn had her hand up.
Marilyn, go for it.
I can hold my question if it's not answered, but on this one slide, I did have one, or the last slide, I did have a question. If it's answered, I'll stop. But with this question, is there, with other contractual things that you've had that are going to come in the future, was there a recommendation for the vendor contracts to have a, I hate the word punishment, something in the vendor contracts that they don't get paid if they don't perform? Was there anything discussion about that with the management?
There were elements in the contracts if they did not perform certain things, or there were like service level agreements, there were penalties. In fact, give me a second. If you don't, Marilyn, if you don't mind, I'll turn it over to Shirley to talk about the performance metrics piece. And I will find within the report, the detailed report, exactly where that is within the report with regards to when there are penalties for the contractor.
And that's okay. If I want to finish your briefing, I'll make sure you finish your briefing, and we can come back if she wants to talk about that. But I just want to make sure that I know that was something that Karen, who's the regular chair or normal chair, had been concerned about, and that all of us also, that there needs to be a hook for the vendors somewhere to make sure that they do perform.
Yes, so I'm sorry, Shirley. So page 19, within the audit, the very first audit finding on the performance metrics, there was a area here about what we titled customer focus. And you can see there under, we had some standards that we were comparing to. So $500 is to be deducted from the monthly invoice if call response falls below 95%. So there's another $500 just to be deducted from the monthly invoice if the abandonment rate exceeds 2%. So there are metrics in there that talks about what impacts it will have on the service provider if there are downfalls or non-compliant for customer service aspects. But page 19 of the report, you will see that.
Okay, thank you.
So with respect to performance metrics for this program, we wanted to take some of our auditing was done at the more detailed level, the transaction level. This particular section was to take a holistic view and see whether or not the program writ large is achieving the things that the county wanted it to achieve. We divided our work into safety, reliability, customer focus, and ADA compliance. While there were not specific goals for the program, we sort of read transportation strategies that the county has put out and kind of felt like those four areas are really the four most important things for this program. To Marilyn's question, so I think at a high level, if I could summarize our findings on the way that Transit Bureau is using the performance metrics embedded in the contracts to provide oversight of the program. We found that they were not always requesting those authorized deductions from the invoices, those penalties that Wayne just talked about. While they were present, they were not always being requested. We found that they were not always leveraging available data to kind of do the monitoring and oversight that they could have done. And just not taking that kind of higher level look. They were, we have all kinds of respect for the folks that we talked to who run the STAR program, but they were a little bit more busy being in the weeds of the program than backing up and sort of taking a more holistic look. So in terms of the metrics that we looked at, our overall finding was that the existing metrics failed to demonstrate that STAR was meeting the program goals of providing safe, equitable, accessible, reliable, and convenient transportation. There was one metric, so that we looked at both metrics and standards, and I want to clarify those are not the same thing. So in terms of performance metrics, there was a performance metric on safety that was measured in terms of preventable crashes, a tolerance level, but it was not being calculated because there was no tolerance level against which to measure it. So one of our recommendations is take a look at that metric, come up with a tolerance level, and begin calculating that. There's no point in having a metric if you're not actually going to use it. Some of the spot checks that go to safety, things like, safety aspects for vehicle, or I forget exactly what they all for. Let's go back here and look. The program includes preventative maintenance. It includes random vehicle spot checks. It includes passing certain safety standards. If those things are not present, there are opportunities for deductions. Those deductions were not being taken. So it's something that we recommend, do those spot checks. The time that we were auditing, there was some transition in the program. And so some of the routine things that were being done were kind of disrupted. So we were just encouraging them to get back to doing that. Data quality came up here as well with respect to metrics that talk about service reliability. So 90% of the passenger pickups, a metric, 90% of passenger pickups each month are supposed to occur within 10 minutes of the scheduled time. And ride time should not exceed 2 hours, except in extreme weather circumstances. And there are deductions there as well. If those metrics are not met, the Transit Bureau can take deductions from the invoice. So when we looked at the data and tested a couple of months, we found that performance had slipped a little bit. Things were not as on time as they had been previously. Deductions were not taken for the months where the performance fell. We did identify a number of rides in about a 3-month period that at least initially appeared to exceed the 2-hour window. They were like, you can get almost anywhere within the 3 zones in 2 hours. Didn't make sense. So TransDev went back and looked at that data, and it turned out that the data had been entered incorrectly in the system. So it was based on what the manifest said. It's not put in correctly. So what looked to be violation of that 2-hour rule was actually poor data. So that's where we come to kind of the validity of the metrics is hampered by data quality. With respect to ADA compliance, we were really looking for them to see what they are doing to ensure that the vehicles themselves are safe, accessible, that the various provisions in the vehicles are working as they're intended, and that those things are checked. And while it is the service provider that's providing that service that needs to be compliant, it's still up to the Transit Bureau to ensure that the service provider is in compliance. So we suggested that they need to have some way of kind of providing oversight over that. And then customer feedback and invoice deductions were not, again, being used to address performance issues. So this goes to the calling that Wayne mentioned. Ride scheduling calls are to be answered within 90 seconds. Not more than 2% of calls should be abandoned. In other words, there's no answer. And then the deductions that Wayne mentioned. And we found as well that some of that had started slipping and the deductions are not being taken. So our recommendations really go to, make sure the data is good, make sure you're calculating the formulas and metrics that are available in the contracts, make sure that you're sending the signal with the authorized deductions if performance is slipping, and try to use that data to, kind of monitor and identify slippages in service as they're happening rather than find out about them that they happened 6 months ago. The Transit Bureau has taken a number of actions to improve those metrics within the realm of what they were able to do in terms of contract mods, launched the spare system, updated the red website, and are working on, or maybe I guess we'll find out whether they're using the ADA compliance checklist.
I have a question, but do you want me to hold that till the end or just ask? Okay, so I'm just curious, how have we been reporting ADA compliance and data to the federal government so far? Because if what you guys are saying is true, and that we have more, at least in the status quo, we have more data collection methods, how have we been reporting accurate numbers? Or have we been doing that at all?
To the Transit Bureau team, how would they, what has been in reporting to the government?
I remember looking at some of the reports that they do send, but I don't remember what they were reporting on.
So for reporting to the federal government, every single year we are required to report operational data as part of the National Transit Database. And that report goes through various rounds of reviews through the FTA, Federal Transit Administration. So typically it includes ridership, it includes information regarding our on-time performance. It also includes information on our financials. So those are elements that get reported every single year, and it goes through different rounds of checks through the NTD, National Transit Database, and then if everything is adopted through NTD and FTA, we get a letter saying that we've been certified. If those things are not approved, we will get a letter saying that there's some issues that we need to correct for the next cycle. So that'll be for the next fiscal year. And Rocco or Clinton, Carissa, if there's anything else that I miss, you want to add on to that as part of the NTD report?
No, you did great. Thank you.
I have a question. I was gonna leave this to later, but it seems relevant to this. You just said that you found major areas of non-compliance, which seems like if it went through multiple federal reviews, they should have picked up on. So had they, were you having trouble getting certification? And a related question, what made you choose the STAR system as one of the areas for audit? Had there been significant complaints or something like that?
So with regards to how, we got to the point of selecting for audit. So I joined the county July of 2024. Upon coming on, there had been 2 county auditors preceding me, one of which had a robust list of things to audit. And so as soon as I came on, one of the first tasks that I had was to meet with the county board and to say, okay, well, these are things that were already on the list of things to audit. And being a team of one, so and knowing that there was going to be a second individual coming on, it was like, So what could I reasonably get done in a 9-month period? Because I was setting up a kind of an interim audit plan. And so a couple of audits came out. One definitely, well, this one, housing grants and community benefits were audits that we said that the county board felt strong about. So the county board had some interest in wanting to know how the STAR program was operating and to take a look. I mean, it was already under consideration, but they felt it was important enough to continue on. Like, let's keep this on the list, and if you could get to it. So started housing grants first, and then
So it shouldn't have anything to do with the Fed saying your certification.
not at all. Not at all.
And to your comment about major areas of non-compliance, I think that's a bit of an overstatement from what the audit said. So I think in terms of, areas where Wayne and I found that either the program was not meeting the standards that it was intended to meet, those are contract requirements, right? So, I think I want to be very careful. We're not talking about legal non-compliance. We're not talking about regulatory non-compliance. We're talking about adhering to contract standards. And they weren't, it wasn't like it was pervasive across all aspects. And it's just in the testing that we did, we found, performance was slipping a little bit. Not that, that can happen, right? But then the action that wasn't being taken was the county was not, where available, deducting from the vendor's invoice to.
That's a very important distinction. I'm
Yeah.
glad you pointed that out again.
Yeah.
Clarification question. It says here that the recommendation is to implement a process to monitor no-show data. Is that no-show data on the WeDrive use side, on the rest side?
So when they when WeDrive goes to pick up a customer and the customer's not there, they log that person was not present. They wait for a while, the person doesn't show up. They go on with their ride and they log the fact that person didn't show up. A couple of repeats of that, and the customer then is kind of in a category where they can contact them and they can say, you missed a couple times, you can't keep doing that. What we were pointing out was there's information in that no-show data that could be used to, because obviously the no-show is disruptive to the other customers because you're spending time picking up somebody who's not there. So you're kind of wasting time for the rest of the folks on the ride. And our point was that there's information, there's intelligence in that no-show data that they could look at to see if there's any trends that can be identified and take actions to try to reduce that prevalence of those no-shows if that's possible.
And just a follow-up question, because some of the no-show data can lead to an equity issue in the sense that if I have a disability that may delay or impede my ability to make an appointment on time. So I'm just curious as to if there's any recommendations or way to factor in potential delays, because for some people they live with like flare-ups or medical issues that may impair or impede their ability to show up to an appointment on time. So I feel like those individuals, at least from a disability perspective, shouldn't be as heavily penalized against them, if that makes sense.
So the report points out that when somebody has 2 no-shows in a row, the call center will call that individual and find out if everything's okay with them. So I would, Transit Bureau should speak to that. But when I talked to them about that section, I definitely got the sense that there's an awareness of what you're talking about in the call center, and a concern about the customers to make sure that they're okay and to find out if is there something that I get the sense that they work with their customers.
Yeah,
So there was a part, I'm sorry, there was a part of, with some of the customers that, now that the customer service center can see real time where the vehicle is. Sometimes it could be a location of where, the driver can't find the customer or the customer can't find the driver. But now that there's more real time of seeing where the driver is, helps to potentially, eliminate the chance that it's that no-show because the driver couldn't find the individual or the individual could not.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't think the county's no-show policy is used as a punitive tool, but more just like a checking in on how to better connect. Whereas like, most of our transportation's like fixed route, whereas the paratransit star is kind of like an Uber. So like if we've all tried to find Ubers before, they can be difficult to find, especially in an urban county like Arlington. Yeah.
More questions? We'll go to the next item, which was involving on invoicing. So this was taking a look at the data that came in that would support how we would pay the vendor. And the We Drive You was using a billed revenue hour calculation methodology that was not consistent with the contract, which resulted in an over statement. So that was an area that we noticed. But during our testing, there was a contract shift where instead of doing from billed revenue hours, so under the billed revenue model, they were rounding up hours when they should not have been rounding up hours. It should have been actual and not rounded up to the nearest quarter hour or whatever they were rounding up to. It should have been exactly to that amount of time. During the testing, there was a shift in the contract model where they were billing at a cost per trip. And in one of our test months, there were a significantly higher number of trips that they were billing for that should not have been. And it was an error back on the side of We Drive You, how the number came over, which, kind of gets back to some of the making, the data quality pieces of making sure that you're sending over good, reliable data. So that's what impacted to go to the part of it was of that 490 trips, there was where they calculated wrong. And then there was another portion of that where they billed for trips that had not, where the trip had canceled, the customer had canceled, but we still were billed for the particular trip. And then the other part here is with the deadhead hours. That We Drive You was not backing out deadhead hours. So if there's times when if the driver was going from the yard to a pickup point with no one in the car, that they should have been backing out some of those hours as well. So that was something they were not doing. We did extrapolate out on with the billed revenue piece. And we went back as far as we could because the contract required 5 years worth of records. So we recommended, based on some of our testing and the error rate that we found, to extrapolate that over the 5 years and to we had a recommended recovery to go back for 5 years. And I think that totaled a little bit north of $108,000 to go after that amount. So recommendation here was for the Transit Bureau and working with We Drive You, not only to go back for the 5 years, but to also work with We Drive You and making sure that they do their data quality checks before sending over the data to us. And so management again agreed with this particular finding, and I'll with management, when we turn it over to them to their response, we'll see what the kind of where they stand on corrective action for this particular finding.
I think we got a raise on the chat.
Yep. Clinton.
Good evening, everyone. This one actually isn't part of our presentation. However, I'm happy to report out that Arlington Transit was able to be reimbursed by We Drive You to that tune of $108,000 in the fall, and this finding is closed out.
Well, related to that, it doesn't sound like you haven't mentioned any animus on their part, purposely doing this. Or maybe there was, and are there just not enough paratransit agencies to go to? I'm just trying to figure out, Like, why would they have not been charged for things? And how could they get away with doing this? My thought is that there's just probably not enough paratransit providers, and so you're stuck. But I'd like that not to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, to say like what was when you kind of look at their data and their process, because one of the things that we do is to, like as Shirley was describing that life cycle, we spend time to understand a process. And I will say, like when I was working with and understanding the process around their data and how they calculate their data, it was, it was very inconsistent. Was it intent? I wouldn't say that. Like, I didn't see anything that would point to intent. It was, because when I was, and I think it's one of the other findings around operational data. There were times when you would have, like at the end of a shift, depending on who some of the supervisors were, checking manifests, reconciling manifests, balancing data. Some of the people closing out the drivers were really good at it. Some others weren't. So it's just not having if I were to look at this and go back to We Drive You, my recommendation to them is like, you really need to make sure you have good quality standards and closing out the day. So how they would close out the day, it just was depending on who was working that day. Again, some were good, some were not so good, and you could see that along the way. So I wouldn't say it was anything malfeasance or intentional to do something different.
For the training, which you highlighted as recommended, and the reason for not pursuing the penalties. Do you get to that later? I mean, it's interesting.
I mean, when there were penalties for the invoices when available.
Yeah, because why should they make any changes if they're not penalized for them?
I don't know that we understand. I don't know that I understand why the penalties are not pursued.
Yeah,
Oh, well.
But again, I mean, we're looking at a contract compliance and as Shirley was saying, like, we were looking at, this is what your contract requires. Now, when we're understanding the process, show me how you're doing this. And, then we could say like, oh, yeah, there are some areas where there's penalties for non-compliance, and it just wasn't.
That'd be a question for the procurement office staff of mine. I'm not sure how that works in the county of recouping those credits for non-compliance.
So like the procurement is very decentralized. So I mean, it would be back, not the, for, the central procurement office, it would be procurement, the contract officer or the project officer over this particular contract. It is for them. And then we'll say that there was a number of, even on the We Drive You side, there were changes in team. There were changes in team in the Transit Bureau. And in fact, there were changes, when, I'm sorry, Clinton, for saying this, but like when Clinton took over, he raised the question.
Okay.
Why are we getting billed for this? Why are we having this? And then going back to We Drive You, oh, that's the way we've always done it. And we're auditors. Well, black and white to the letter of the law, it says X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. And
So, but there was question, and it was just a historical practice of, well, this is how we've always done it from We Drive You. And when, like I said, fortunately, Clinton had that email that showed, yeah, we questioned them on this, and they said, this is how we always do it. But us being the main auditors, it's like, gotta draw a line somewhere.
Completely understand.
TG has had their hand up for a while.
Sorry.
Go ahead, TG.
Hi, my name is, I'm Tanya. I'm here with Peggy, co-chair of the Transportation Committee for Commission on Aging. I just had a question around, I'm looking at the management responses. I'm trying to understand capacity within internally to actually monitor and evaluate. And so I guess I'm seeing a lot of findings around redrive, but I don't see anything from a management response that speaks to internal control mechanisms that are put in place to ensure that there is some type of monthly data pool, that there are sometimes there are call monitoring or anything that I'm just not sure. Someone said, how did you get here? Like how, if you're billing, right, and you have internal control practices in place, someone has to approve the invoices, right? You would think someone, the core, right, working with procurement, there's a core and someone working on the project side that are looking at this stuff before submission. So I guess with a management response and from an auditing standpoint, I guess I'm not saying anything from an internal controls that says that this will be a satisfactory, I guess, response.
I mean, I'll take that. There are practices that the Transit Bureau has in place on a monthly basis for reviewing all kinds of information, not the least of which is to prepare the what is that report here? NTD report. So, you know, we didn't report on every single thing they're doing. We reported on the deficiencies that we found. You know, I think maybe Rocker or Clinton could speak more articulately to what the reviews that they do and the internal controls that they do have in place that were working. But we chose to focus on the things where we found deficiencies. That's helpful.
If I can add to that point, I'm looking at the recommendations and it's largely saying that, and of course we should, and we have asked for reimbursements, right? But then my question is, as you mentioned, we need a process in place that can prevent such overbilling issues. And obviously, as you guys have attested to, there needs to be better standards, and whether that's on their end of implementing better training and better consistency across our staff, that's an important process. But is there any contractual obligation for them or any mechanism that holds them to that standard? Because I don't want this to be an issue where 2 years later we have another audit, right? And then we say, oh, we found more overbilling issues, and right. So I just don't want this to be the same cycle.
So one of the things that we did that we shared with the Transit Bureau was with some of the like data analysis and things that we did to identify these things. It's like, this is how we did this. This is how you can look for these things and how you can provide, you know, the oversight of invoicing and data accuracy. Like these are like how we would do analysis to compare two different things and say, look at this. I'm not gonna tell you what your threshold could be because I can't design your control. However, if you are performing this monthly and you look at it this way, if you see a variance that exceeds what defined as tolerable, then you need to go question it. So like we did provide that to the Transit Bureau, you know, during the audit, and at the end, we went over and shared some of those things that could be done. The other thing that we talked about was, you know, in negotiating that new contract with WeDriveU, you know, kind of where I come from and like my time at Universal Service, when it came to you're going to make a representation about your data, like you need to come down hard on them. This data that I'm presenting to you is fair and accurate. I have verified it. Like you make them sign in blood that it is true and accurate, and that if they do anything wrong, there will be a significant penalty. So that was something that we had just talked about, like, you know, kind of going forward. But again, we as auditors can't be so prescriptive where we're designing their control or what the control is, but we can at least give some framework of how to do this going forward so we don't have this again. But we leave it to, so that's why in some of our recommendation language, it's very broad because we can't design the control. But even like this, showing the example when we said, you can do this, but we're not saying you have to, but this is a tool that would help you to provide better oversight going forward. Does that?
The last slide that actually Wayne's last slide addresses some of the things that they plan on doing to address your exact issue.
Don't have hands up for Rocco and Clint, or now it's,
Rocco and Clinton, you took your hand down. Did you mean to?
Rocco took their hand down.
And just kind of level setting expectations with the presentation that Wayne and Shirley are giving right now. These are based on the audit recommendations that happened in June. Wayne and Shirley will be following back up with Arlington Transit in the first quarter of FY27. So once we take over and talk about the findings that have been completed or in the works, this will be the first time that Shirley and Wayne have heard what we've been working on. So some of the questions they're not able to answer because they're not officially coming back to Arlington Transit to get a follow-up to see if we have been responsive to everything that we said for all of the management responses until first quarter of FY27. So just trying to give you all a little bit of the timing as to why they won't have some of the answers as to the work that we've taken since the audit was completed in June.
Good point.
If there are no further questions, we can move to this, to the last finding here on operational data. And again, it'll talk to some of the things that we were just mentioning here. So this gets into some of the data points that were coming in for involving their trip manifests. So the trip manifests that were not properly reviewed or verified by WeDrive at the end of service shift. So that's what I was just explaining, how depending on who was closing out the driver or what level of rigor that was being put behind that. So that's what led into some of the kind of cause to the billing errors that were noted. So you can see between November and December, what were the error rates. And this is where we provided some of the reconciling procedures or things that could be done to watch, to look at the data, monthly revenue data, kind of how to look at this going forward. So this is addressing some of the, this particular finding here, and the recommendations would better suit and help improve data quality going forward, because that data, again, as we talked about, is very important. And so this, the things that are done here would really strengthen internal controls, not only on fare collection, but also just kind of that data revenue reporting aspect. So those are all of the findings. I mean, I guess Clinton, I can turn it over to you. I know, again, the team has been working very hard on implementing the corrective actions around these. As Shirley and I both said, we have years and years of audit experience, but one of the, I would say, for the Transit Bureau and working with the full team, they really did a great job with embracing our recommendations, did a great job with soliciting our thoughts and feedback. So I really applaud the team for their level of commitment to wanting to do things better. I've been in audits where it hasn't gone so well sometimes. But for this particular audit, they've even reached out to us a couple of times. Hey, we wanted to get your thoughts on this real quick. So it's great that we have that relationship where they could come back and check with us, even as they were developing their recommendations or implementing their recommendations. So I'll turn it over to Clinton.
Thank you very much, Wayne, and good evening, commissioners. As Wayne was stating, it was a very cooperative process with the county auditor's office. We had a great learning experience and worked hand in hand to make the STAR program the best as it can. Ms. Jones.
Good evening. I just have one question. How does DAC, how do they interact with, I guess I'm trying to understand if DAC is responsible for both of these, WeDrive and the other contractor. Who is responsible?
Well, that's a really good question. Are you talking about Disability Advisory Commission or?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm Peggy Jones, and I was just trying to see how DAC relates to these two contractors to see how what kind of input they are receiving so that they can verify data.
Oh, yeah, well, that is a very good question and timely, because DAC does not necessarily have transportation expertise on our current commission. It is something that we've brought up with commissioners just in the past budget cycle. And one of the things that we're requesting is that there could be an identified person within Arlington County that can make comments and know things related to both transportation, fair housing, and the ADA. Because right now there's nobody within the county that's specifically focused on that, with the exception of our wonderful liaison, Courtney, who focuses on employment-related discrimination, which is a part of an ADA requirement to have such a position. But when we don't necessarily hear the issues around transportation, but if someone were to be providing us public comment around transportation, we would hear it. But we don't have any responsibility to necessarily review all reports or make an end of the year report or anything like that, which is why we really encourage the county to take these requirements seriously, and maybe appoint a person who could do that.
Becky, just to expand on Elizabeth's points, this is Commissioner Andrew. As an advisory commission, we don't have like direct oversight when it comes to managing the contracts and looking over the Arlington County's vendors. That's something that that largely falls to staff, the employees who work for the county. But as a commission, our role is to, of course, advise and to hear from the public, and just like we did now, listen to the presentations that staff brings us so that we can be updated and educated on these matters, and so that we can also provide counsel. But we don't, as I know you mentioned, contracts and oversight on vendors. That's not, we can do as an advisory.
Slightly push back on that. Yes, sir. The main legal authority on that is county and the county staff off and the county manager's office. But I would say advisory commissions at large, like the transportation commission, they're more, taking what we're hearing from the citizens and working with staff to see where's the disconnect in between what we expect and what the county tells us. This is the service level that you should be receiving. Like, your transit your ride time shouldn't exceed 2 hours, stuff like that. So it's not a full enforcement. I would say it is an oversight of an oversight.
Soft enforcement.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask this after the presentation, but for example, we were involved in the Arlington Transportation Plan. It's a 10-year plan. And one of the things we noticed was it was very light on paratransit. And we were glad to be invited. We were the only people necessarily representing, as far as I can see, paratransit. The pedestrian advisory committee, the elderly advisory, the aging committee on aging, rather, they very much appreciated our recommendations. We shared recommendations. We supported each other's recommendations. But this person request is pointing out an issue of, we don't get paid to do this. We don't necessarily have somebody with transportation experience on the committee at all times. And it is something that we have been looking at. One thing we do is have areas of priority each year. And so that is something where, because we have such limited resources, we will try to, say, okay, transportation's a priority, or affordable housing. So that was a long response to your question. And I hope we answered it. And I'm sorry, you can go ahead with your presentation, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Marilyn, you have 1 point, and she is a commissioner, so I want her to be able to.
Oh, Marilyn, you're on mute.
You're still muted. We know you're saying something brilliant. All right, well, we'll go on with the presentation while Marilyn figures that out, and I'll be sure to call on you again. So.
Yes, and to Peggy's last point, the immediate past chair of the Accessibility Subcommittee, which monitors all accessibility of public transportation in Arlington County, which is a subcommittee to the Transit Advisory Committee. The immediate past chair of that committee was also a member of the Disability Advisory Commission. So that link was there during her time as chair of the Accessibility Subcommittee. And so that's the body that makes sure that all transit and transportation is accessible within Arlington County. They meet once every 2 months. Their next meeting is the second Tuesday of May, immediately before the transit advisory 7:00 p.m. meeting.
That was Alexa.
And, yes.
She was great, and we will make sure that somebody continues to be on those calls. Thanks for mentioning it. So go ahead, because I think
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Clinton.
You're welcome. Absolutely. My pleasure. All right. Well, thank you all very much. We're just going to quickly go through the management follow-ups that we've gone through this far. Joining us from Arlington Transit is our assistant chief, Carissa Nichols, our compliance manager, Francis Teddy, and our STAR program manager, Rocco Visconti. Rocco, if you could go to the second slide. Commissioners, we will be providing you these slides after the meeting today. We will be sending them directly to Courtney so that you all are able to review them at your leisure when you would like to. I'm just going through our first slides. We have 4 slides this evening, 3 with content, and then the final will be the thank you slide. This is just going to give a summary of our management follow-up. We actually gave you all a briefing on this 6 months ago today, actually, back during the month of October. And so we're glad to have the opportunity to come back before you to talk about the work that we have continuously been doing since the publication of the STAR audit report last summer. First 2, Wayne and Shirley talked about this on these very first 2 bullets, overcoming those technical challenges with trip scheduling, dispatching, and communication. The county staff overhauled a prior trip scheduling program and a rider booking platform, now utilizing a new website and application provided by Spare. Arlington Transit implemented Spare last June as the audit was finishing up. We implemented Spare June the 3rd of last year. One thing that we went above and beyond with the Spare application, this Spare application allowed for all of the booking and all of the dispatching to be in one continuous application, as opposed to the different applications that Wayne spoke of as well. One thing that the passengers of STAR had been asking for several years was the ability to pay with a debit or a credit card. And to that end, this past February, we were able to implement the Stripe app. The Stripe app allows passengers that utilize STAR to be able to reduce the cash handling, and also it allows for the reduction of fraudulent transactions. So now those that utilize STAR can actually go in and put their credit or debit card directly into their account, and they can pay for those trips directly with their credit or debit card. We implemented this in the month of February, and during the month of February, we had a 5.7% spare wallet and credit card usage, which was a percentage of the total payments for the month. And then also for the month of March, we saw that number double. We were up to 11.4% of usage of all total payments for the month. This number, of course, is higher than the app adoption rates likely because the credit debit card payment by the phone is set for when booking recurring trips. So passengers still have the ability to add their debit or credit card to their wallet, their spare wallet, and still call in and make those trips if they so choose to. And then as far as an overall adoption rate on a monthly basis, the since we implemented the spare mobile app, we're at approximately 8 to 10% adoption rate on a monthly basis. So that's an update on the technology piece. Rocco, if you could go to the next slide. During the audit, as one of the findings, we as the talked about the overbilling where We Drive You and previously Diamond Transportation had overbilled Arlington County over $100,000. During this fall, we went in and we revamped the invoice review procedure. What we have done in this instance is that we have created a standard operating procedure that is currently under review and being finalized to be able to have multiple people reviewing the invoice before it's actually paid. Also, as part of one of the findings, we implemented a biweekly coordination meeting with the Star Call Center, the We Drive You operations and county staff. And during that meeting, all accidents or incidents, we hold a review board to review any accidents or incidents that had been established. That was one of the findings as well, and one of the recommendations to have that. So with the implementation of this meeting, we're able to talk about those things on a biweekly basis. One of the other recommendations that came out of the audit was the monthly revenue variance testing. Wayne walked us through just the ability to look at the percentage of trips that are delivered in the zone, taking the amount of revenue that comes in on a monthly basis, and for us just to come up with an estimate of how much data we should come in based on the percentage of usage in each zone. What we then do is we compare that to the actual revenue that comes in on a zone basis, on a monthly basis. Rocco conducts that analysis as part of step one of the monthly review. And then myself and one of our budget specialists review that data just to make sure it passes the smell test. If we're bringing in $10,000 a month and on our estimate, however, We Drive You says we brought in $25,000. We just know that that variance is just too great. And so we look for a variance at 3% or less, just based on our estimate on a monthly basis. Anything that exceeds that, we dig a little bit deeper in the data with We Drive You to figure out why we had 10, 20, 25% revenue variances. To date, since we began implementing this last summer, all of our variances have been in that 3 to 5%, and we haven't had the larger numbers that we saw before we started implementing this practice. And then finally, the modified contract with Star Operational Provider to better align with the performance standards and penalties with recommendations outlined in the audit. We, after several months this fall, on March the 12th of this year, we were able to finish up these contract amendments. A couple of the things that Shirley and Wayne talked about, there was three in particular that there were metrics to assess a liquidated damage. However, there was not an amount associated with that. Through this process where we were able to amend the contract, we were able to add an amount for definition of preventable crashes. The contract had the definition we added a definition, and there was a metric for liquidated damages for preventable crashes. However, there was not an amount. We added an amount there. We also added an amount for biannual inspection deduction amount. And then finally, there was the Virginia Safety and Emissions Inspection Deduction amount, where the contract spoke to a liquidated damage would be assessed. However, there wasn't an amount. We added an amount there, and we were able to get that signed last month. So those contract amendments that were recommended in the audit, they have been signed and executed, and now they are enforceable through the contract.
That is great. I think I just realized how over time we are, and a lot of what you just said is very comprehensive. So I think I might reserve is when you send this information to us, we might be following up with you once you've had a chance to digest it. But it sounds to me like you're started on it very quickly with the contract modifications. Does anybody have a quick question they might want to provide? Otherwise, we'll probably be following up with you.
Yeah, I just had one quick question. In the bi-weekly coordination meetings, which are great, in my, day-to-day job, we have an external vendor for call centers, and it's an amazing tool to use. Within that framework, are you having sessions where you're reviewing customer interactions, like reviewing phone call recordings, email chat, whatever We Drive You utilizes? Because I remember a long-term feedback that we've been getting from Star users is that the call center was not the most helpful or understanding of writer needs. So I just is that part of the oversight that y'all do with the vendor?
Great question. I'll answer that question quickly in two parts. This past Friday, we went through line by line the standard operating procedure to respond to passengers in anytime they submit a customer comment, the roles and responsibilities of both the call center and We Drive You. And secondly, to that, we have a bi-weekly customer service meeting every Friday morning to go through any issues or complaints that we receive from customers and to make sure that all of the vendors are able to give a satisfactory answer so that those comments can be resolved.
Amazing. And for the complaints, is that run through does the county receive that complaint first, or is it given to the vendor and it's on the vendor to escalate the complaint to the county?
Those are received either through the call center or directly through the county. We then send them to the call center for them to be entered and logged into our customer complaint database. Once they're entered, they are sent over to We Drive You to investigate. We Drive You has 7 days to investigate and provide all of the details. And at that time, the Star Call Center has 3 days to be able to close out the complaint and get back to the passenger with a resolution. If we can't reach the resolution, then the County We Drive You and the Star Call Center get together to come up with a resolution.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you. And Andrew, one last question.
Yeah, just a quick question. I know that thank you, Clint. I know that our auditors mentioned that there, at least in the past, we didn't have an ADA compliance checklist. Has something like that been implemented since then?
Yes, we developed the ADA checklist in December of 2025 and just finishing that up. One thing that it did not, we relied directly on We Drive You to do our ADA checklist. However, Rocco and our asset manager went out to do a biannual inspection of the fleet in December, and we'll be going out and doing another one during the month of June.
Thank you.
Could we get a copy of that checklist?
Do we get
Yes.
a copy?
Absolutely. Rocco, I believe we also circulated that with the accessibility subcommittee so they can give their comments, but we can definitely circulate that with this commission as well.
Well, I really appreciate you coming in person and how comprehensive you were. And this is a big issue to us, so we really will be talking about it at our next meeting. We'd love to have the PowerPoints, and we only have to cut it short because we invited the planning commission folks and they've been waiting a while. So, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And hopefully your folks are still all here. If they're not, I understand.
You're up to the table. Yeah, so. What's that in?
Hi, so go ahead. I know that this is related to that we've been talking about how we would like to be able to, in some way, ensure that the SPRC meetings are able to address some of the issues related to disability access on the inside of the building. So that's why we had asked you to come, and I really appreciate you being here, and go for it.
Okay, so hi, everyone. Let me make sure this is, I guess that's okay. Everybody can see this?
Yes.
So hi, everyone. Elizabeth, I recognize you from coming to our meetings sometimes. But just for a refresh, I'm Matt Pfeiffer. I'm with the Department of Community Planning, Housing and Development in the Planning Division. And so my role is the site plan review supervisor. So I oversee the group of 5 planners that work on our special exception site plan projects. They take in the projects and review them and take them all the way through the public process and all the way through county board approval.
So when you say special exception process, could you explain what that is? I mean, I'm thinking that maybe disability, could you just explain what it is?
Absolutely. Yes, I will. I have, that is like the very first slide.
Okay.
So I will get into that. But just again, by way of background, I've been working for the county for almost 18 years. So I've been here for a while, seen a lot of changes, and I remember many years ago working with Doris Ray on this commission. So some familiar faces, but a lot of new faces as well. So we get into some of my slides. So I only have a few slides, and then we can just kind of open it up, or I'm happy to just go through it, and then you guys can ask questions as we go. So this slide is just a little bit about the legal framework. I think this gets to your first question. So just from a land use law perspective, every state has their own legal framework for development. And in the Commonwealth of Virginia, development is divided into by right development, meaning it is zoned a certain way, and there are laws in the zoning ordinance that say, a site can be developed in a certain way, a certain density, a certain height, certain lot coverage, things of that nature. And then there is special exception development. Special exception development is typically uses or intensities of uses that are beyond what is sort of the threshold within a district. And they're either special uses that require an additional level of review by the locality, or they are, mixes of uses or densities and intensities of development that again require that additional review, or in our case, are implementing incentive zoning, which is something that we use as a tool in Arlington, which is how we get all of these good places like Courthouse and Clarendon and Roslyn, where we are allowing bonus density and things of that nature. So in Arlington, our zoning ordinance has 2 different types of special exception uses. So we have use permits, like I said, those are things like outdoor cafes and live entertainment and childcare, things where it requires county board approval. There may be conditions of development, and there is intensive review by staff and the public. Site plans are redevelopment or development plans where density and height exceeds by right. Developers can ask to modify zoning standards. So if they're over density, they can ask the board to modify that standard to get more density or more height or more lot coverage or shallower setbacks, things of that nature. And then they're mitigated by conditions. So conditions mean are basically laws that are approved with site plans that regulate the use. So that gets to the second slide, but I have more information on this. So when the board approves a site plan, we call that an entitlement. That means that a developer is now allowed to build that building. And an entitlement includes both site plan drawings and it includes site plan conditions. So the drawings consist of like civil plans, which show, where is the building set on a site? How are the streetscapes and, kind of the ground plane designed? Architectural drawings would show, what the building looks like, how big it is, what the massing is, things of that nature, and then landscape. And landscape is, obviously, planting and grading and things of that nature. So site plan conditions, like I said, we have a list of, I think, 55 standard site plan conditions that are kind of our baseline, we use as our starting point for every new site plan.
Is that available online? I would love to see a copy of that. Okay.
Sure is. That is available online on our website. We're actually going through the process right now of updating that. We've got a few tweaks that we need to make. But those site plan conditions regulate both the construction and the use of a new building. And so in terms of construction, you have conditions that regulate, like developers have to provide construction worker parking plans. So when the building is going up, they have to show where construction workers are going to park so they don't impact the neighborhood. And then we have conditions that regulate all of these post-approval plans that we need to see, like a civil engineering plan and a landscape plan and a facade plan, things of that nature. So that.
Is that all in the code, or is that something that as a committee we could try to influence?
They are reflective of the code, but usually they go beyond the code. So, yeah. So this is, I think, the meat and potatoes of what I want to talk about with this commission, which is the process, because the process is kind of complicated. So the diagram on the right, I've clipped this from our administrative regulation 4.1, which is really a document that's geared more to the developers, that tells them essentially what is our review process and what has to be in an application. But you can see it's a very long and intensive review process. And so what's in like the blue part is the total county review process. So you can see there's a large section where applications are submitted and it's under review by staff before the public process starts. And so what's in green is the public process. So there's a whole phase of the application review where staff is reviewing the drawings and the application materials themselves to make sure that all of the information that we require is on the plans, and that things are correct, don't contradict each other and make sense. And that usually takes like 30 to 60 days. It's a pretty long process. And then when the green starts, that's when the public review process starts. And so the public review process includes SPRC and some other stuff, which we'll get into. And that usually takes like 6 to 9 months. So it's not an easy process. It's pretty intensive. I think it's longer than other jurisdictions, but in Arlington, we like to make sure that our plans are reviewed thoroughly. So the green diagram here, this is supposed to be sort of representative of the green part of this horseshoe diagram.
There's another green part at the bottom. What's the second green part?
Yeah, so that's what I'm gonna show you here. So this is sort of each stage of the public review process. So the first one is the site plan acceptance. And so that's where we formally accept an application as, okay, now your application is complete. You provided all of the information that we require. Your plans are in good shape to be reviewed by the public. We issue a formal letter saying your site plan has been accepted. Now it can be reviewed by the public. And then the first thing we do is an online engagement, which I have a slide on, I'll get into. And then we have 2 SPRC meetings at a minimum. And then we have commission meetings and a county board meeting. So a couple of notes I want to bring to your attention about the review process. The staff review and the public review are separate. And so staff will submit a formal recommendation to the planning commission or the board prior to public meetings. It may or may not be consistent with what the community thinks, and that's okay. That's the way the process is designed. The planning commission will also issue a formal recommendation to the board. So when the board is reviewing these things, they'll get a formal recommendation from staff, formal recommendation from the planning commission. A lot of times they'll also get letters from Transportation Commission, from Parks and Rec, for any other commission that the subject area touches. COU is.
Just, really, I've been to so many SPRC meetings, but I still need help with the planning commission. You're saying that's separate from Arlington County staff?
Correct.
How's that chosen?
Yeah, so the staff, we provide support and services to the planning commission. And we, help the planning commission and the SPRC set up the meetings, and we're there as subject matter experts. So in case there are any technical, we provide a presentation at the beginning saying, here's what the policy says, and here's how the plan conforms with the policy. But at the end of the day, the SPRC or the planning commission may have a recommendation that is different from staff's recommendation. And that's how the process works. So that's the fourth bullet, which is that, we saw that very recently with the Waverly Ridge site plan, where staff recommended denial, and the planning commission recommended approval. And so that was a differing of opinion, and that's okay. Again, that's the way the process works. So some other notes on the planning, on the site plan review committee specifically. So the SPRC is a standing committee of the planning commission. So they own that process. And again, we provide support and services to the planning commission to ensure that those meetings happen. But they are in charge of it. So.
And if I heard you correctly, they had the first cut at the apple before they organized the SPRC. They were
the planning commission?
Yeah.
No, staff does. Yeah. So the first stage of the public review process, we call this an SPRC online engagement, because by that time we'll have a roster and we'll send it to the SPRC, but we also distribute it to the wider public. And I think in some ways the online engagement is a better tool for engaging the broader public. But what we do is every site plan project has a project webpage, and we host an online forum essentially for feedback. And that's the very first stage of the public review process. So the applicant will prepare a narrated slide presentation, which is it's like a video in PowerPoint, and you can watch it. And they'll go through, essentially just an introduction to their project, and their vision for the development of the site. And then staff will also we will provide a presentation that goes through what is the applicable policy and what is kind of our first read on conformance to the policy. So that's the first stage, and I think it's really helpful. Yeah.
How do you notify people that this is the process? Because I've been on this committee for a long time, kind of clueless, remaining clueless. So I didn't know until more recently that you could go online and you could see all these design forms. How do you even educate folks that they can do that in order to have the public input?
This is a good method for going to individual commissions and talking about it. But I think we have a very large distribution list that we send email blasts that go to like 10,000 people. And for specific projects, this is my next slide is the rosters. If you are a named member of a roster, you will get all of those notifications. And so, but if you are representing an organization, we rely on those representatives to get the word out to their larger organizations. So, but it's not just commissions, it's also like civic associations.
ECNB, places like that.
Exactly.
So I just got one today.
Yes.
About the, yeah.
Yep.
So, there's a link there that
Yes.
I would be able to go on.
Yes.
So the goal would be that even this commission maybe would be trying to help people. Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. But also we want to hear from you all yourselves. So we want you to go in and view the applicant and staff presentations, and then there are prompting questions. So that's all. I do have a slide in here, I think. Maybe I don't. I kind of cobbled this together.
I'm thinking of things that we might want to put for our committee, like,
Mhm.
almost this is what the committee can do. And to have that kind of information. We don't have anything like that currently. And this is really good information to have. It's not your fault at all. It's just taking it all in.
No, absolutely. And this is good then. So we're educating you to participate more and get the word out. So, the online engagement is the first stop. And again, what it does is we will, with the input of the project chair, for that is chairing the SPRC for that specific project, we will work on some prompting questions for the online engagement. So like for VHC, we've got a list of like 10 questions. And the questions are, do you think that there is too much impervious surface on the site or something like that? Or do you think it's the right amount? Or, is there enough parking? Things of that nature. We're trying to get people's opinions on various topics. What that does is that helps us then inform what that eventual agenda is going to be when we actually get into the SPRC meetings. So we have our typical process is we have 2 hybrid SPRC meetings. Although for really big and complicated projects, we have more, like River House, I think had like 7 meetings or something.
Melwood.
Yeah, Melwood, I think we had 3. So there were quite a few for some of the more complicated ones. But the way it works is that and again, I have this is the next slide, but the Planning Commission will adopt a specific roster for a specific project. And so when you get to the meetings, we have them in this room a lot. And the people who are named on the roster can sit around this table. Members of the public are welcome to attend, but they can't talk during the discussion. Although we usually have public comment at the end of meetings where, 15 minutes or so, where members can listen to the meeting, and if they have questions, they can raise them. You're allowed to attend virtually, even if you're a member of the roster. And I know when Doris used to come to our meetings all the time, we do have hearing assisted equipment that we go and borrow from Courtney and set up. So let's see. So the rosters themselves. So I took this. I know it's kind of hard to see, but this is actually a clip directly from our webpage that says these are the organizations that get a seat on SPRC. Now, you notice that as a committee of the Planning Commission, every planning commissioner gets a seat. So they're always invited. The Planning Commission will name a chair for a specific project. So each roster will say, this planning commissioner is the chair of this project. And that chair has a lot of power. They can say, okay, this is our standard list of organizations that get a seat. Because this site is in this specific location, I want this other organization that's not on our standard list. So they have that power to do that, right? Like for VHC, there are a number of groups that are going to be at SPRC that we don't see all the time.
So how about, sometimes our committee has been very small in the past. We are expanding now.
Yeah.
But as a commission,
Yes.
we're exhausted by all the SPRC meetings
Sure.
that everybody was going to.
Yeah.
Would we be allowed
Yeah.
to suggest, well, we want this person from ECNB to be appointed for us?
Generally speaking, no. The intent here is that you actually get a member of the commission itself. Okay. However, if there are special circumstances, that's a conversation you can have with the chair of a project, and they can make that decision.
I'll park for just 1 second. Marilyn, our commissioner, Marilyn?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the video dropped. That's okay. I've been listening. Just as two quick questions. One is both Elizabeth and I have gone to some of these meetings, to these reviews. And my takeaway, and I think also, I don't want to speak for Elizabeth, is that it's not about that we're not involved. It's the when and then our recommendations for the process. So we actually would like to insert something into the process. One of those things that we want to write about is putting ourselves in the process of testers, and host testers. What we're finding is that that for all these people, all these organizations that are involved, including our own, it's hard to have a seat at that table. And we've been at the table. What happens is we're there too late. So if you went back to that other chart as to when we would insert ourselves in the process, and our recommendation, which we'll get to another time, it's going to take some real work to get to a process change recommendation, is to have testers that have a disability to be involved in the design, not at the approval and not at some of these other junctures. So that we would need testers at the beginning, what I call testers, that would be persons with a disability, whatever kind they had, we would have to arrange for that, that we would be the conduit for that, to bring them in early in the process so that we're not fixing and finding out once the building is built, we've got an issue. So it would be pre and post testing. We'd have to figure out the timing on that, where it would insert. And it's not just about showing up for meetings, giving opinions, sharing concerns. This is about being more proactive. And I know we're really running out of time. So I just wanted to see if you had a recommendation as to where we would, once we do develop a process, where would we send it to you? To
We will
you?
ask, how do we get the process to include the internal features of the building?
And we're working on that. We are working on that as well. Already working on that with Amiri and with JD and others and some code people.
And I do want to add, so a frustration from DAC, I will not speak on the other commissions. We feel a frustration dealing with the county's current planning process to the point where we're brought in, it feels like that the county, everyone's basically just trying to put a bow on this and get it to county board for approval because, this is a very costly process, not only for the county, but also for the developers and, want to be aware of that. But we just feel, going back to that slide on the timeline, having that commission meeting at the end just feels like a very ineffective place to put it within the process. And I know, staff does not design that. That's done by the planning commission. And, we might want to have a meeting with the chair of the planning commission to discuss that process.
Yeah,
Meeting
yeah.
has been held, it might have been with Marilyn or with Karen, but they did tell us, every commission out there wants to have a checklist, pre and post. So if you could address that as well, as long as we're all.
Yeah, I think I'll go back to the previous slide that shows the diagram. I think it's a little bit misleading because the blue part before we get to the green part is mostly, it's about staff being able to ensure that the plans have all of the information on them that they need, which is, it sounds simple, but it's not. But I think that, the green process, I think there's a misnomer out there. And I hear this from every commission I go to, that we get involved so late, there's no chance of change. And that's just not true. I've seen projects, even after, a meeting, make drastic changes, change use, change, density, I'll give you an example, a project that was approved on Saturday, Walgreens site on Langston Boulevard, that made very big changes in the middle of the process. They came with the building in one place at the first meeting, and by the second meeting, due to some stormwater management issues that we're dealing with. Building moved. So, you know, I think it's a misnomer to say that changes can't be made and that the public is brought in too late. I think that, you know, it is a collaborative effort, and the planning commission staff and the developers, really, the developers are having to balance a lot of different topic areas. So it's not, you know, we bring in the subject matter experts. All you guys are subject matter experts to SPRC, and you're speaking to it from one perspective. We also have folks who are, I'll go back to the list. I mean, we have folks from Transportation Commission, Housing Commission, Parks and Rec Commission, Forestry and Natural Resources, Historical Affairs and Landmark Review Board, Economic Development, Climate Change, Energy, you know, and on and so on and so on and so on.
Don't
Yeah.
have money to necessarily do this, or so that's one of the reasons that Marilyn is saying what she did. I mean, as a commission, we go there and mention certain things, and they say, sorry, we're not equipped to answer that, because that's the true in the internal parts of the. So inviting us doesn't really help. Also, I get the impression, like in the federal government with regs, so we're not talking about regs here for the federal government, but if somebody makes a comment, they have to reply.
Yeah.
The reply could be, we'll take it under consideration, but they have to reply. And I don't know of any way to even know if there was a response to something we made, or when the decisions about the internal part of the
Right.
building was made.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, we don't get the feedback as to whether we were heard. We don't know that anything that we've even recommended has happened at all. Or we see it at the end when it didn't happen. And we will send you, if you're happy, we're trying to make it public. Courtney can probably get it to you, a video that shows where it broke down, in the building, and it's gone very public. It's at the county board now, that you need to see the videos of what happens when we're ignored.
Yeah.
You need to see the videos of what happens.
And they might send it to you already, because we know you're the point guy.
Yeah, I'm the point guy. Yeah, that's.
No, I don't think everybody got it yet, because there was an issue. Courtney can tell you, but Courtney can handle maybe getting you a specific copy of that.
Sure. I'm happy to take a look. No, I appreciate that perspective, and I understand where some of the frustration is. I think specifically with accessibility issues, a lot of times, you know, that we're dealing with the building code, and the building code is not necessarily subject to the site plan entitlement process. The code is.
And that's what we're trying to change, is the building code.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
That's what we're trying to change, is the building
I
code.
think there's limited ability to affect that with SPRC, because that's the building code is totally separate. They have to follow it. It's inflexible. It is what it is.
But how about like
Yeah.
the community environmental groups, of which my husband is very active member, you're a good one, you probably know him. You know, they can say, are you gonna do this type of native claim? And they can tell you, this type of native claim.
Mhm.
So can we, I mean, the things we wanna ask, it might not be required by the ADA, it might not be required by the building code, but it might put a little bug in their ear of, are you going to have push buttons to the amenities in the building, for example? They might not have thought of that, and they might be willing to go with it.
Yes.
So that's what I want to be able to, we want to be able to impact with checklists.
And sorry, with what Elizabeth is talking about with that, I'm hoping push buttons are a building code. If not,
No,
then
they're not.
They're not. Nope,
that
not
is-
internal. They are not internal required. No.
that is extremely surprising. Well, anyway, going back, community benefits.
Mhm.
Could we request the planning commission or whoever we need to talk to add push buttons to what tool within the planning commission toolbox would be the most effective for us to get push buttons?
So you.
Or hand waivers too.
Mhm. A couple of things I want to say, and I'll come to your point. Where I was going with the concerns about you know, the building code and everything, and what you were saying, Elizabeth, is exactly right. And this slide, I think, addresses it. Where I've seen success Where, like, for example, like, say the developer, there are options under the code, right? They could do a jump elevator, they could do ramping systems up to an entrance or something like that. And this is where I think you guys have very meaningful input, because you could say, well, the building code would allow either, but what do you guys think is more accessible and better for the public, right? And so those are the types of things, when we hear that at a meeting, and in our typical agenda, that usually comes in around site design and layout, building design and architecture. These kind of topics is when we usually hear those types of comments, but it's then on the developer to respond to it, and to staff to remind them, hey, we heard this. Not just staff, but also the planning commission leadership, to say, hey, we heard this at an SPRC meeting. Did you do it or not? And if not, why?
Okay.
They don't have to do it. That the bottom line is, developers don't have to
Right.
implement anything that
Right.
any commission tells them,
Yeah,
but they do it to be responsive, and they do it to try to get support,
yes.
from the SPRC and then eventually the planning commission.
I think the briefing that you'll get with the videos embedded, the EAC link, Courtney, will help him a lot to understand how we pushed all the way through the state of Virginia to get the building code changed for the developers to follow. And that will help you, I think, it's at least educationally, because until that happens, we know nothing's going to happen unless a building decides to have a budget to go fix things. But I think this is for residential buildings, condominiums and apartments. Courtney, please send that specifically to him. I know you were allowed to do that. All of our guides have, but we can't send it out to you without permissions. That will help you.
To answer your question specifically on community benefits, so community benefits are a specific thing, meaning what a developer can do to earn additional density. And so there are very specific pathways in the zoning ordinance for things that they can do to earn additional density. And so those include specifically affordable housing, sustainable design, and then community facilities, which include things like new streets, parks, libraries, things like that. So it wouldn't be community benefits. However, the planning commission and the board can approve additional conditions that make other requirements.
Okay.
So power door openers are things that we've seen approved with site plans. Specifically on that one, and I'm not speaking to anything else, just power door openers, we know that there have been conflicts with the building code. And so site plans that have that condition on there have been really difficult to administer, because the building official gets this and says, this conflicts with the building code. You have to go back to the board and get rid of this condition. Yeah.
Would you, if you're able to, could you provide us like a memo on that so we can include in our legislative package?
That probably is better coming from the building official than me.
Okay.
But that's something I can take back to him. Yeah, Amiri, yeah, Shariar.
Yeah, like if we could get like what technical issue needs to be fixed, just send it to us in the email, and we'll write, we will pull the ear of every elected official in Arlington to get that updated.
Yeah. So yeah, that's specific to that, but
And also related to the community, I'm assuming it probably has a 10-year plan, like the Transportation Futures Plan. Is there, I mean, if they could do eco, then they could add something else to it. Is that something that everybody and their mother tries to add to every year? How do you?
Sort of. So again, the zoning ordinance says specifically the types of infrastructure and improvements that are considered community benefits. So if it doesn't meet that list in the zoning ordinance, it doesn't qualify. But as to the specific ones that are chosen, they're guided by our sector and area plans. So again, going back to the site plan that was approved at the Walgreens site on Langston Boulevard on Saturday, that one for community benefits, they had affordable housing, both on site and a cash contribution. They had a new piece of stormwater infrastructure installed, and they had a new public space, because those were the specific things that the Langston Boulevard area plan said this site should do for community benefits.
Right.
So that's what guides our review and our recommendation.
You can see that, I was just on that Arlington walk, this weekend, and we went to where the Amazon folks are. And you can see where they've done their community benefits to get their cash write-off. And it's just such a good incentive. I would just love to be able to sneak our way in there, you know.
Mhm. I think, again, based on my experience, and I've been doing site plans for, a decade and a half, but where I've seen successful input from this commission implementing like real tangible things is when you get involved in SPRC and, when you get to this topic, site design or layout or transportation, you ask the developer, how are you, what accessibility features are you providing? And then you provide input.
Twice,
Yeah.
only twice, because.
Yeah.
And both times they said, well, we're gonna comply with the ADA.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that doesn't really help.
Yeah.
But I'll continue, we're gonna find a better way to ask.
Right, yeah, no, and
The ADA is the minimum, not the
Yeah.
maximum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
and I think maybe what may be useful is to say, well, here is what we would like to see in this building. Here's a change that we would like to see. And then,
This is very helpful.
yeah. Let's see, did I have, oh yeah, so this is just, you can go through this real briefly. This is just a little bit of information about the site plan webpage. So if you go to the county's private development page, we have a list of all the active site plans, all the ones that are in preliminary review, all the ones that are actually going back to like 2012, ones that have been approved. I think we've got a ton of information on there. We've got a virtual walking tour. We've got links to all the application materials. And then this on the right is a chart that shows the public process, shows when meetings will occur. It actually has all the links for the online engagement. So if you wanted to see what's live, you can go to the web pages. You can see that, an online engagement is occurring. Let me go review this material and provide some comments.
Excellent.
And I think that was my last slide.
Well, we really appreciate you staying late. I know Brian has, it's only 9:03, so go for it.
Yeah.
Just a one question. Do y'all have like a newsletter like other divisions in terms like is there a newsletter where I can see what planning projects are in the pipeline?
We don't have a specific newsletter. I think our communications group publishes like planning and building news or something to that effect that you can sign up for. My group doesn't have anything to do with it. It's our comms people that take the information that we give them and do it. So I don't have any details about it, but I think it's called like planning and building e-news.
Okay.
And that'll have information like, hey, this online engagement launched. Yeah, other than that, you can go to the private development page and just look at all those projects and see what the next upcoming meetings are. And then also there's a planning commission calendar that has all of the SPRC meetings on it.
No, I'm so glad you asked that because an easy, I said easy. I don't know the communications people, but the RL news that comes out every single day.
Yeah.
And it always has upcoming events.
Yep.
And if you could add that as an upcoming event, like we are now taking on Millwood, we are now taking on DAC. I think that people would be like, wow, I didn't know that. You know? I'm always thinking, well, that RL News goes to so many people. And I think I say it wrong. RL News is a newsletter, but the one that they send out every day. I mean, it would be great.
Is it the media notes?
Probably. But you
Yeah.
can sign up online and say, I
Yeah.
care about XYZ.
Right.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
I
I'll
think
take that back to our comms team for sure.
great. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have to do the minutes before we leave, right? Is that what
Sure.
we have to do?
It's up to you.
I think we should did anyone read the minutes that would like to approve them?
I motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Second. Okay, so we approved your trade minutes.
Motion to forego the rest of the adjourn.
So moved.
Well, can we do that at the next meeting? I mean, Karen's gonna be very upset, but
I motion to,
Adjourn.
the table. Well, I motion to table the remaining agenda to our May meeting.
There you go.
Yeah.
I sure have a request before we adjourn.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Marilyn.
I need a request, either Courtney or Carol or somebody. I've got, for that May meeting, JD wanted to have, and so did Amiri, the new senator, Karen, Senator Elizabeth Bennett Parker, Delegate Patrick Hope, and then Karen wanted Delegate Adele McClure. And I haven't been able to find anybody that can give me the administrative contacts to get them invited so that I can send them both the EAC link, if they're going to have to be able to open that EAC link, and a short invitation. So Courtney, I guess I need your help, and it's getting to be, I'm having to put off doing anything on the grant process because this has taken on. We had four code enforcers show up at the last meeting that I had. So we've had 13 activities and 9 meetings so far since. I don't want to fill you in on all that. We'll just talk at the May meeting. But Amiri, JD, and now they want the senator and the delegates to come in to the next May meeting, and we're running out of time. So I need some assistance. Otherwise, I could vote to adjourn the meeting.
well, actually, I would like to say it differently. What we have next is the working groups. That's what we had next, and I think all of us have things to say. I was at the budget meeting. You talked to the Commission on Aging. You have a lot to say with all the work you're doing. Well,
some of that can come out in the May meeting. I just, I was just going to bring up the commissioners before that May meeting.
Yeah, and for that, maybe we should do like a written report, and then if there's any follow-up questions, we can dedicate time.
Okay, I will send out to each one of you as or you can look on the agenda that Courtney sent.
Yeah.
To see where, does that work for you, Marilyn? Knowing
Sure.
that.
Sure. I'll make it work.
And then Marilyn, for the elected officials, I'm not sure if it's the legislative liaison supposed to do that. If they are not touching it, I do have the contact information.
Well, that's LC. The last person's ELSE. Isn't that what the last person is? And I think JD was going to try to handle that. But again, I needed to get some kind of information about how to contact those people. And then they would be the LC, ELSE. I can't remember the last name that JD had mentioned.
Yes, so I'll reach out to the gentleman and keep you in.
Okay.
Brian, our legislative.
Yeah.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
So next steps, we always, Karen always does next steps. So next steps is really that each one of us are going to write up what we said we would report on in our working groups. Also, we need to, Courtney's going to send us those PowerPoints, and I think it'd be interesting to take a good look and see if they've really addressed some of the concerns with the STAR report. I don't know. And then Karen wanted me to remind everyone that you can still comment on our the one that has a Google.
The strategic plan.
Yes, you can still comment on the strategic plan, and you should do so by going to the Google Docs. If you have any trouble getting onto the Google Docs, just give me a call. Just Andrew, everybody knows we're okay.
Yeah.
So those are the last things. So now, Marilyn, you can make your.
Madam Chair, there's a gentleman.
Oh, for public comment?
Want to reschedule?
Who's there? I can see someone there. Who is it?
Is that okay with you guys? If you take the public comment?
That's fine.
Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I was at the last meeting, for the transportation session that, invited the people from Metro and.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I was at that meeting, so.
Thank you for joining it.
Yeah. After the meeting, I engaged the chair, but I'm done, building for people with disability and aging. And so this app is going to serve people with disability when Star or maybe the door to door or metro access is not available. And with Star and metro access for us to use it, you always have to schedule 24 hours ahead. Yeah. So this app that I'm building is going to work just like bar and lifts or the door dashes working. So if you need any service, you can just go to the app and then you get service right away, just as able people get access to bar and lift. And so I shared with her, and she said that's a brilliant idea. So she wanted me to be here for this meeting today, and that she wasn't going to be here, you were going to be here. So she going to share my idea. You guys here, and before that, I've been introduced to what's the name? What's the lady's name? Rachel, right?
Oh, Rachel Coates, yeah, she's.
Rachel Coates, yeah, Rachel Coates, and then that I get Justin Martin. Yeah, and so they shared the idea with them, and Justin Martin and wrote back to me that they want to know if we have any discount program for people with disability. Yeah, we don't have that, and we are now structuring our pricing first, and when we do that, we'll create the discounts and first, and then option after that. So I'm here today to introduce my technology that's will help people with disability, and I'm also available to help with anything that will make Star better. That will help the other community.
Yeah, I did hear them say that something about real time, the new, one of the things that they're going to be able to do now is provide real time updates of where the,
Yeah,
and that it's sort of like Uber. So, all right, that sounds great. Are you, and it sounds like you're trying to be in coordination with what Arlington is doing. Because I know they've already also talked a lot to us about this new test thing that they're trying. I downloaded it, Micro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also heard in one during the presentation, mentioned something about prayer and then.
Spare, yeah, So there's a lot going on. This is a good time for you to be working on it.
Yeah.
But just, Andrew and Ryan, do you have anything to add at this point?
But if you have any proposals or ideas, just send them along to us.
Sure.
Or any
Sure.
questions about accessibility? We have a member who can discuss accessibility for people with low vision. And we have an ADA expert on
Yeah,
some of that.
yeah, I have all those features on my app. And any kind of feature that will help any kind of disability that people are experiencing. And, hardship getting transportation. I have all those features in my
Great.
yeah, myself, I mean, I was experiencing all this, and I put all my experience, together to put this now.
Right, and so, yeah, I mean, I would recommend somebody that's an expert in the transportation provision, and the technology provisions of the ADA. Look at it, beforehand.
Right.
So this, that would be the only thing. It would be hard to like come out and then we find out that it wasn't accessible to some group of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. So I'll be launching in Purple as well. Like June 1st, should launch at the DMV. Yeah, Maryland, DC, and launch it also
those you coordinated with the Department of Motor Vehicles in Virginia and Maryland?
Yeah, yeah, to sign up for, documentation for DAC and all that.
Yeah, I definitely encourage you to, and maybe one of us can help you find someone who's an expert in the ADA requirements for technology, to look at that
Right.
before you launch it. Because,
Of course.
I'm not an expert.
Right.
Find someone for you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for telling us, and that's a big project. Good for you. Um, All right, I know you've waited for a while. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I know you waited for a while. I think you're
That's
coming. I
okay, that's
appreciate that
fine,
as
that's
well.
fine, yeah.
We
Very
are
welcome now.
always looking for new members. With different areas of expertise. So, Andrew, you put together that cool flyer, right? Yeah, so, did you give your email to Courtney?
Yeah, I'm gonna get to.
Because maybe we could send you Andrew's flyer, about being on the commission. All right, a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.